This past Sunday, we celebrated Pastor Lee's 25th anniversary, and with that, we learned about the unshakable kingdom that God is giving us, but how do we respond to that unshakable kingdom that God has given us? We're going to talk about all that today, and for today's Bad Doctrine of the Week, can you be a Christian and a Republican at the same time? According to a post that I see here, no, you can't. We're going to talk about all of that today here on the Digging Deeper podcast. Well, hello and welcome to the Digging Deeper podcast, where our goal is to dig a little bit deeper into that week's sermon, so that way we might dig it a little bit deeper into our hearts. My name is Chris Brown, and I'm the associate pastor here.
My name is Jacob Belding. I'm the Connections Minister at First Baptist Hazel.
I'm just going to stare at him.
Hello, I'm Judah. I guess I'm the guy in the chair.
He's the guy that makes everything operate and make sure that y'all hearing what we're hearing. How y'all doing?
Doing good, man. Judah?
Pretty good.
Yeah. It's been a while since I've been with y'all. I think it's been, 3 weeks?
3 weeks.
3 weeks. Between vacations and schedule issues and sick babies. But I'm back, and we're just ready to go, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah, we're going to dig into it. Did anything fun happen while I'm gone?
Oh my gosh, so much.
So much fun.
Fun things. You should, me and Michael, man, we had a great time.
Yeah.
We got to talk about, what happens or when you die. And we talked about ghosts and all sorts of fun things.
I got to talk about ghosts?
I know. Yeah, you didn't watch it?
I think I watched part of it.
Yeah.
I don't remember the ghost part, though.
Yeah, we got talking about ghosts a little bit.
I do remember, because y'all talked about, haunting things, right?
Yeah, we don't get to haunt all of our friends after we die.
Well, if I was on the podcast, I would have found a theological way to allow ghosts and to allow hauntings.
What is it? The ghost of Samuel appeared to
that's where I would have went.
Is that
with
where
it?
you're going with it?
That's where I would have gone. I guess this is probably a little bit more zombies. But after Jesus was crucified,
all the dead people raised.
So, there's a few different ways you can go about it.
100%. So how about Samuel? What does he just have to what happened with him? Did he have to sit around and hang out until it was time? God wanted him to talk to Saul.
That passage is such a good question, but it's not today's passage.
It's not today's. Yeah.
So we're not going to get into that.
See how much fun we had, though?
I know. That's why next time one of my kids is sick, I'm just going to tell them, suck it up.
That's right.
We're going. Or I'm going to have Judah watch him. Judah, do you want to watch a sick kid?
Sure.
Okay, cool.
Man.
All right. I'll let Randy know. Anyways, we are glad that y'all joined us here today. If you weren't here on Sunday, it was a very special Sunday. It was Pastor Lee's 25th anniversary here at the church. 25 years. I'm 32, so that means he came here when I was 7.
Yep.
Yeah. Judah, how old are you?
I wasn't even born.
He wasn't even born yet. And Pastor Lee was here. And so we celebrated that morning with some testimonies, and that evening with a potluck. And you can go back and watch it online to see all the different things. But one of the main things that we wanted to do with it is not just celebrate Lee, but celebrate what God has done through Pastor Lee and through the church in these past 25 years. And so it's a fun time. But what Pastor Lee spoke about was God's unshakable kingdom. That was actually the title of the sermon was The Unshakable Kingdom. And the whole premise of the sermon was basically that that God has invited us into His kingdom, and that this kingdom will last forever. It's not going to be shaken. It's not going to be taken down. And we have the passage calls us to a response because of that, because God has called us into a kingdom. We are invited to, 1, these are the points, 1, be thankful, and 2, worship God for that. And so we're going to get into all that today. But before we do, 25 years, that's a long time. How long have you been at the church?
Well, our first Sunday was the Sunday after you and Randy got
That's
married.
right.
So, what's your anniversary? How many years have you been married, Chris?
It's June 2nd, right?
Yeah,
I think it's
yeah.
June 2nd is
Yep.
the anniversary.
So June 3rd, since June 3rd of 2018.
Yeah. So y'all have been here 5 years.
Yep.
I came here in August of 2013. I just graduated college.
Mm-hmm.
So I am been at the church for a little over 10 years. Judah, when did y'all get here?
Like 2017, maybe.
So you've been here longer than Jacob.
Oh, man.
You have more seniority than Jacob does.
Easy.
Jacob, you get over there. Judah, come out
Okay,
here, man.
Judah, why don't you come sit down over here? This will be great.
No.
All right. That's a long time. So it's weird. I don't know how it is for y'all. So for me, being here for 10 years, it like feels like a long time and no time at all at the same time.
Yep.
It's weird. I was talking to Wendy this past week, and she was asking, "Hey, were you here when we got our new lease on the copier?" And I was like, "Yeah." And she's like, "Do you remember when that was?" And I'm like, "I'm not sure." And she's like, "Well, this is saying like 2015." And I'm like, "That sounds about right." But it feels like yesterday that we just got that lease on that copier. So man, just time flies. And it's I would actually be very interested. So I've been at the church for 10 years. I've been full time on staff since 2015, so about 8 of those years. I would actually be very interested to go back 8-10 years ago and see what did the church look like 8-10 years ago, and where's it come since then, because like all these things happen so incremental that you feel like things are changing, but you don't see as much change. But then you look back 5 years ago and you're like, oh gosh, whoa, a lot has changed.
Well, even having been here for just over 5 years now, sometimes it's fun to I'll go and I'll be on the church Facebook page, and there's all kinds of pictures and things like that. Now maybe I'll be looking for somebody's picture or something like that, and if you go back far enough, it's like, man, the church even looked different. Like there's some pictures of some of the events that went on 10 plus years ago in this building anyway, and it's like, is this the same church? Like, things have even changed a lot since, like what you're saying. So even not having been here and seeing some of those pictures, it's really incredible to think about.
Yeah. Also, on a side note, Judah, I forgot to check the focus. Does the focus look okay?
Yeah, focus is good.
Okay, all right, cool. All right, just wanted to make sure y'all could see us crystal clear in all our glory. Yeah, so I was actually the other day, just doing a similar thing. I was looking through old services on our website, and I found the very first time I preached at the church. And I remember when I preached, I remember thinking, wow, this is amazing. Like that was really good. And I watched it and I was just cringing the whole time. And isn't it funny? Like in the moment, you always feel like, man, you arrived, you're there. And then 5 years later, you're like, man, I wasn't even close. I wasn't even at the dock.
Right.
like if I would have stepped off the boat, I would have just went straight into the water.
Right. It's like your old Facebook posts. Like they come up on your memories and you look and it's like, theologically, that is so cringy. I'm going to just erase that one.
Not even theologically. There's one. I'm not going to share it on here because it's so bad. It's so cringy. But remind me afterwards. It's bad. Anyways, all that being said, lots of things change. And like I mentioned last week, so I preached last week, and we talked about how God had given the victory to Moses and the Israelites, and one of the first things they did was build an altar to the Lord and named it "The Lord is my banner." And the reason they do that, and the reason they have the Passover festival and all those different things and write songs, is to allow themselves to or set up opportunities to remind themselves of what's happened and what's going on. And that's really important. It's really important to God because God told them to do some of these things. But it's really important to us just on a psychological level, because we'll just, we'll be here 10 years and we'll forget just to sit back and think about, okay, where have we been and where has God brought us? And so that was one of the cool things about, this past Sunday, is we were able to just stop and just take a moment and just think back, over the past 25 years, where has God brought the church? And so, anyways.
Yeah, how about the pictures that Pastor Lee showed of the old building? And he even apologized for the window dressings. Those were really cool at the time. They're not cool now. And seeing that comparatively itty bitty sanctuary, with the pews, and not that there's anything wrong with pews, but it's just it was.
No, there is something wrong. They are uncomfortable. Chairs are far superior to pews. Pews look cool. Yeah, they have like a nostalgic factor to it, but they are uncomfortable.
Growing up at church, we had pews, and we had pads on the bottom and on the back.
Oh, we didn't have pads on the back.
Ours were comfortable, and so I have good memories of pews, but they weren't just the plain wooden ones that you have to sit on.
Well, it's like so ours had the pad on the bottom, not on the top. And like the way, and maybe all pews aren't created equal, I don't know. But my pews growing up, they were like in the most uncomfortable, unergonomic position ever. And so like they're in which, this is from like a lazy teen who wants to like slouch. Yeah. They have no wiggle room for slouching. It's like you will either sit up proper or you will be uncomfortable. Those are your two options.
It was a strategy. Like, you will not be falling asleep during the sermon at this church. We have wooden pews that are...
We have some... So we have chairs here, and they are like 2-inch thick padding on the entire thing. And there's some of them, there's only a handful, but some of them have over time just bent the back. So if you find one of those, you actually have a reclining chair.
Oh, yeah. Okay. Here's a thought. For the new building, someday, whenever that gets built, we need to take the movie tavern approach, where all of the chairs are reclining, have a reclining feature. And so we just, hit that bar, lean back, put your feet up, and you can listen to that Sunday sermon. I mean, that sounds great, right?
Yeah, so those are really great theaters, because usually when I go into a theater, like an old school one, what do you want to do? You want to lean back, and what do you do with your feet? You put your feet on the chair in front of you. Yep. And so it's like you just pray that no one sits in front of you, right. So that way you can like be comfortable. And then someone sits in front of you, you're like, well, I guess I might as well be pews.
That's right. Yeah. Why am I even here?
Why am I even here?
Might as well be pews.
So, yes, movie tavern chairs in the new sanctuary. Anyway, we are getting so off topic.
Yes, we are.
25th anniversary. If you want to see all the nostalgic aspects of it, go watch the service. But for right now, we're going to cover the sermon. Hebrews 12, 28 through 29 is our passage today. You want to go ahead and read that?
Yep. Therefore, let us be grateful for receiving a kingdom that cannot be shaken, and thus let us offer to God acceptable worship with reverence and awe, for our God is a consuming fire.
Yes. Okay. Sorry, I'm pulling it up as we talk.
Yeah, it's good. So the great thing about it is, there's, especially in the context of Hebrews 12, the writer to the Hebrews is talking a lot about the persecution that the early church is facing, and how things just aren't generally like comfortable, aren't generally easy. How things their very lives in a lot of cases are being shaken to the core. And so here, this is just very, very encouraging. It's an encouraging word that, hey, even though maybe in this life, right, it seems like everything is being shaken all around us, we're receiving this unshakable kingdom that is going to last forever, and it can't even be shaken.
Right. Yeah. So a few months ago, whenever I did that sermon on has God failed, like in looking at the statistics on the decline of Christianity, that was one of the main focuses of that sermon was, hey, things seem shaky around you, but fear not, we're on solid ground.
Yep.
Like things that shake other kingdoms isn't going to shake this kingdom. Pastor Lee got a lot into this, imagery used around, shaking kingdoms and stuff like that in the Bible, and with earthquakes and things like that. Because there's lots of things that can shake kingdoms. Like, like one of the things that they were fearing about that you were talking about was just persecution.
Yeah.
Like persecution was a very real thing. You think we are persecuted now? We're not persecuted now. There's some areas of the world where there's actual persecution. The persecution that we feel in America is mild at best compared to what they were experiencing in the early church, and so there's the feelings of shakenness from other people, from other entities, from other organizations, other nations, and then there's feelings of shakenness from like God is coming in,
right,
and he's pulling all this down. And he mentioned earthquakes. He mentioned Haggai, which I don't know if you want to look at Haggai, but a lot of what that passage was talking about was essentially referencing the same thing, that God will, in the day of the Lord, when the Messiah comes, there'll be earthquakes and kingdoms will be shaken. And anyways, all that to say is that there's things that will try to shake God's kingdom and fail, and then there's a time that God will shake other kingdoms and they will fail.
Yep.
It reminds me of the passage, I think it's in Matthew, where it's like, humble yourself before the Lord or he will humble you. It's like you can either willingly come before the Lord humble, or in the second coming, every knee will bow before the Lord and he will humble you.
Yeah, one way or the other.
Everyone's
humble.
It's going to happen. Anyways, but one of the things I find interesting, talking about earthquakes and natural disasters. So back then, it was like a really big deal to them. So when we went to the Philippines, when it rained there, everything stops, right? Because everything's dirt. It's like literally, if it's like a downpour, you can't go anywhere because the roads are muddy. Now, as technology has come up, we've found ways to like mitigate natural disasters, if you will, or even just natural events going on to not inconvenience us. But I'm actually fairly interested and surprised that with all of our technology, we are still beholden to nature.
Oh, especially in Texas.
Yeah.
Dude, we get a single snowflake and close the schools, shut everything down, and everybody, hides inside and peeks out from behind the blinds like, is it over yet? And then you see some people trying to drive in the ice and snow, and it's like, what in the world are they doing? They must not be from here. Anyway, okay.
Do you remember that really bad ice storm that happened a few years ago?
Yes.
Here. I remember once it kind of cleared out to where it was actually safe to drive, I was driving to Fort Worth for some reason, and I was on 820, and there were just cars lining the ditches from skidding off the road, and I'm like, man, this feels like an apocalypse going on here.
There was one even several years before that where I don't think, for some reason, I was going to drive from Decatur to go pick Sam up at work there in South Fort Worth, and maybe it's because I had a truck at the time and she didn't, or something like that, and roads were bad enough, so I'm like, well, I'll go pick her up. So we were leaving, and as you leave Alcon, and you're kind of in between like 20 and 35, that whole mess right there, there's a service road that goes around. Well, there's just random woman that's standing like by the side of the road, and she's waving for help. So we pulled over and stopped. Her car had gone up off of the road and down into this ravine that was like, I don't know, it was probably about 30 yards from the road. And it's just like way down in there. It's it was insane.
Yeah.
It's like, good grief. And tow companies, we called one for, and they're like, how far off the road is it? I'm like, about that far. And said, yeah, we can't help you. Sorry.
You're gonna have to wait.
Okay. Yeah, so we gave her a ride home, but there was nothing to do about the car. It's all in this brush and briars and stuff. It was a mess.
Yeah. Well, it's funny. So, like ice as an example, rain. We've just experienced like a really pretty bad drought, and that really does affect us. Like, I'm just a little bit surprised that with all of our technology, if the sky just decides to stop raining for a couple of months, we really feel the effect. Now we have technology to help mitigate those issues,
right?
But we still feel the effect. A tornado, we can't stop a tornado.
Nope.
I mean, we can like try to take shelter, but tornadoes bad enough, it's going to level a city.
Oh yeah.
Earthquakes, can't stop those. Hurricanes, can't stop those. Which I always get perplexed as to why people get caught in hurricanes, because it's coming like 15 days in advance.
Yep.
And then, oh no, there's a hurricane.
Yeah. Who knew?
Who knew? Who could have turned on the TV?
Right. I think it's just people don't realize how bad that some of those are going to get until it's there. Like, we've had hurricanes before. It'll be okay. We'll board up the windows and all that, and it'll be fine. And then they get in trouble because it's way worse than all these others before. Yeah. Things like that. But
yeah. And so with all of our technology, with all of our abilities, with all of our insight, with all of our coordination, we still are no match for nature.
Yep.
We're still no match for what God has control over. And so these, pulling it back to the passage of they're experiencing persecution, there's encouragement because we're inheriting an unshakable kingdom. All of these external forces have such, like, it may seem like they have a lot of power in the moment, but in the grand scheme of time, eternity, and what God has control over, their power is so minuscule compared to what God can do and what God will do in the second coming to all these things.
Yeah. It's like the Roman Empire, for example, which, side note, did you see the trend on TikTok?
How many times have you thought about the Roman Empire? Every other week, probably.
I mean, if you're reading the New Testament, it's hard not to.
Oh, yeah, okay. Well, yeah, I guess so. Yeah. I'm not counting that.
It's like pretty much every other day at least.
Yeah.
Right. I'll just think about the Roman Empire today. But no, in 410 AD, the city of Rome was sacked by the Vandals, if I remember right, who were a Germanic people group. And this horrified everybody that was alive there at that time, because for them, in a lot of ways, kind of, I think, reflects our thinking a little bit that, like, no matter what happens, Rome is the eternal city. It can never be shaken. It can never fall. And so it absolutely horrified people that Rome could be sacked. It's like it was, for a lot of people, I mean, the end of life as they knew it. Like the significance of that moment in history can't be overstated. And you had Augustine of Hippo. He wrote "The City of God" in response to that, to answer these questions. Like, oh, is God like given up on us, or like what's the relationship?
Right, Rome has failed.
Right, exactly. And so there was this, and he describes like the two cities, right? The worldly city, and then the city of God, and kind of with these same ideas that God's kingdom can't be shaken. You know, that Rome, or even here the United States, even Texas, as much as it pains us to say it, it can be shaken.
No, well, okay. Hear me out. What if Texas is the promised land? Like it is the new heaven and the new earth.
Why would it not be? There's a part for Texas to play, 100%.
Yeah, sure. So the new heaven and new earth is made. All things are new. Sin, death, shame, thrown into the lake of fire. And then the Bible says that this the new Jerusalem is descending down upon. What if that's Texas?
It sounds about right.
Yeah.
Why would it not be?
I mean, what if everything's wiped out, but before everything's wiped out, God like carves out Texas, lifts it up, and he says, I'm going to save this. I'm going to restore this. Wipes everything else out, brings about the new heaven, new earth, and then boom, God's throne is in the center of Texas. Well, maybe not the center.
Yeah.
Maybe like DFW.
Yeah. Right. It wouldn't be where Austin is because that's just defiled.
That one, God probably just carved out Austin and just threw it away.
It's going the way of California.
Yeah,
So,
and then it just descends upon the new heaven and the new earth. Anyways,
yes, I like this idea. It's great. Except, and then, but Texas gets amplified, so it's really like, all of, like, the entire world, like the earth part, like the ground part is just like Texas, like the shape of Texas.
Yeah.
I like it.
Yeah. It's like what did they call it? The theory that all the continents were together.
Pangea.
Yeah, it's like Pangea.
But it's just Texas.
It's just Texas. Yeah. Okay.
We can do a lot worse.
Yes.
Saying.
But to what you were saying, so like as far as like the world, like politics and countries and borders and all that is relatively like slowed down in terms of like the change. And so it sounds probably similar to like how they were like so certain that the Roman Empire was going to stand forever. It stands to reason that the common thought today is like, okay, the world map is what the world map is. Like it's not going to change. Like America's not going to go down the drain. But even over the past years, Russia invading Ukraine shows us, oh, no, it could change. Now, is it probably going to change in this moment? Probably not.
Right.
But like, just because we've had a relatively mild time of peace compared to, like, the world wars and whatnot, that doesn't mean that something can't happen all of a sudden, bam, like things start happening. And everything has also shifted more economic and much less, territory.
Yeah, we have more economic empires today than political empires.
And that's probably what we're going to see. Like, if America does fail, it's probably going to fail more economically than it's going to be like territory or whatnot. Anyways, all that to say is all of these kingdoms are temporary and can be shaken, yet God's kingdom cannot be shaken. It will stand firm to the end. And we are invited into that. That's the cool thing. We are invited into God's kingdom. You can either, we're given two options. You can either place all your bet on one of these unshakable kingdoms, on one of these shakable kingdoms, and like just hope, man, you win in the end. Or you can like have some insider trading and all on red.
You have the right answer.
Yeah, you have the right answer. And God's like, hey, you can hop on to the losing team or you can hop on the winning team. Your choice. And so we are invited into that unshakable kingdom.
So here's a question. Since we know that all kingdoms, all nations, those sorts of things are temporary, as far as they're able to be shaken. And even that passage in Haggai says that the Lord is going to be the one that will shake all nations. Therefore, all nations will be shaken, right? So what do you think that means for us when we, because we're going to receive this unshakable kingdom, how involved should we be in the temporal kingdoms of the world? Does the question make sense?
Yeah. Are you talking about like government wise, like policy wise?
Could be,
or just in general. So there's always the balance, right? There's the balance of this world's not my home, but at the same time, God has given us life here, and life is valuable and precious. And what we could do is just say, God's kingdom is coming, therefore, let's just toss up our hands and just bide our time until the kingdom comes.
Kind of check out.
Yeah, I mean, is that what you're saying? Like check out or, keep living. So if you check out, the Bible actually addresses that, and I'm sure you do. In, was it 1 Thessalonians or 2 Thessalonians, Paul is addressing them, and they had people that had that exact mindset that Jesus said that he's going to come back. And so they're like, okay, well, Jesus coming back is going to happen soon. Therefore, we're just not going to do anything. What's the point of doing anything? Because Jesus is coming back. And Paul came in and chastised them for that, and basically said, like, yes, Jesus is coming back, but he's not here yet. So you still need to live your life, and you still need to move forward in life, like what God has created us for hasn't ceased to exist just because sin is in the world and God's going to come back. And that's where we get the famous statement from Paul: is if you don't work, you don't eat.
Yep.
And so if I was to take that principle and then to expand it out a little bit, I would say this world is not our home, and so we shouldn't put stock in that it will be. But at the same time, this is where we are, and this is where God has placed us, and so we move forward. And I think that it starts at the core and then works its way out. So, like, obviously, like in your own personal life, you live your personal life in the sense of, like, this is the life God has given you. Work at that life in the most godly way you can. Work its way out, your marriage and your family. You don't just abandon your marriage and your family because God's coming back someday, so who cares? You work at that. You expand out a little bit, your community and your church, and work at that, and then expand it out into your city, and then so on and so forth until you get to like a more kind of governmental level, in the sense of like you're not trying to turn the government into like a theocracy in God's kingdom, but in the sense of God does give us clear instruction that the government's God has established governments to enact justice, and back in the day, they didn't have like a democratic process, and so you had very little say in it. But we do have a democratic process. So if the government's job is to enact and uphold justice, how in the democratic process, how can we help spur that on? Not in the sense of like we're trying to create God's kingdom there, but in the sense of we're trying to get government to do what God established government to do. Does that kind of answer the question?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Cool. Okay.
Yeah, and I think you nailed it with, yes, being involved in life in general and all the things that go into life, right? Being involved in those things, but ultimately having our hope in the proper place.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. Because it's, all the fact that we're made in the image of God and life is valuable and God created us for a purpose, all of those things are still true today.
Yeah.
Like in this moment, like sin screws it up. Sin throws wrenches in it, but the principle, fundamental truth of the value of life and what God has made us for still holds true, even if the curse has messed it up.
Yeah.
Our hope for the new heaven and the new earth is that the curse and the sin is all gone. And so now we are able to live fully out the values and the promises that God established us with. But just because sin is part of the picture doesn't remove those other things.
Right.
They're still there. Yep. Okay. Let's quickly move into the two responses that Pastor Lee gave us, or not Pastor Lee, that Pastor Lee mentioned that the writer of Hebrews gave us. So therefore, since we are receiving a kingdom that cannot be shaken, let us be thankful. By it we may serve God acceptably with reverence and awe. Oh, so mine's a little bit different. It says worship. Right? What was yours say?
Yeah, mine says, yes, therefore let us be grateful for receiving a kingdom that cannot be shaken, and thus let us offer to God acceptable worship with reverence and awe.
Oh, okay, so mine says serve God acceptably. Semantics.
Yeah.
So boil it down to the points that Lee gave us. Our two responses are to be thankful and to worship. Thankfulness, that was all that Sunday was about, was being thankful for what God has done in our life. We can kind of just wrap these 2 points up together with this question. Why is it that being thankful and worshiping God, responding to God, serving God, however you want to phrase it, why is that the appropriate response to being part of the unshakable kingdom?
Well, the first part is because of the alternative. Look at the alternative, right? Being part of a world that is, because of sin, there's chaos, right? There's a lack of stability that exists, right? We try with our technology, institutions, those sorts of things to create stability for ourselves as much as we can. But at the same time, right, all those things are relatively fragile. There's no guarantee that any of the things that we have will last. Right?
Yeah. So that made me think of something. So essentially, you're saying your thankfulness is demonstrating that you understand the alternatives before you.
Yeah.
So growing up, my grandpa was like this. I don't know if you experience this. You have food placed before you, and you're a kid, and you're like, I don't want to eat this food.
Turn your nose up at it.
Or like 3 bites, and I'm not going to deal with it. My grandpa said, what maybe your parents or grandparents said, there are starving kids in Africa.
100%.
Yeah. Now, as a kid, you don't understand the logic there because you're thinking in terms of the logic of, well, if I don't eat this, that doesn't affect them.
Right.
They're still starving.
Right.
Like you're not going to package up my the rest of my pancake and send it over to them. So why do you even bring that up? Well, why do they to help you grasp the context of the world, right? And so it's like you're not being grateful and appreciative of what's before you because you fail to understand the alternative to this. And so what are they trying to do? They're trying to get you to understand the alternative to it. Anyways, that just made me think about that.
Yeah, you're blessed to have food right here on the table and how much more blessed are we, especially as kids who are picky eaters growing up, that we feel like we have the latitude to say, I don't want to eat that today, right?
That's some first world problems right there.
First world problems. That's exactly right. But getting back to the point, right? It's understanding the difference and those alternatives should lead us to be thankful. It's sort of like as far as like salvation goes and how God has saved us. Therefore, I mean, we should be thankful and we should worship Him for all of the things that He's done for us. Well, one of the ways that we really get this genuine thankfulness and genuine heartfelt worship is when we have a good idea of our sin in our lives, who we were before, right? How God has worked in our lives, if God didn't work in our lives, what we still would be, right? And so that alternative, right, and then even that truth of what God has done for us despite ourselves, right, should lead us to this deep sense of thankfulness and practiced worship and service to the Lord.
Yeah, and so that leads to like a good action point that if you're a person who's like struggling to be thankful to God, if you're struggling to serve God and follow God, it may be like you just don't understand. And like I don't mean that in like a patronizing aspect. I was listening to a podcast the other day, and the guy, it wasn't a Christian podcast, but the guy, in a roundabout way, said that he couldn't see himself contradicting his own morality. Like he had he was atheist, so he had his own established morality, and he couldn't see himself contradicting his own morality. Essentially saying, I don't do bad things under my own thing and under my own mindset. And I thought to myself, you don't do bad things like ever? Like are you talking about like there's never a time that you lie,
right?
Because I would presumably he thinks it's lying is a sin or whatever. There's never a time that you go against your own conscience. And I'm like, either one, you're just like the most stand-up guy. Or there's a few options. You're the most stand-up guy in the world.
Yep.
You have such a relativist mindset of morality that's malleable to whatever situation you're in. You just justify whatever situation. Or you have such a misunderstanding of who you are and how you operate that you don't even realize that you're contradicting your own conscience every day.
Yeah. I'm going to go with the third option.
Yeah. And so that's like an important thing to do. Like if you're having a hard time being thankful for the salvation that God has given you, sit and think long and hard about how awful of a person you actually are.
Yeah. And I think it's even easy for believers who have been in the church for a long time. It's even easy for us to do that, to really, to forget, where it is that we came from, what God has done in our lives, and all the reasons that we have to be thankful and all the reasons that we have to worship. And so, finding ways to even remind ourselves of that, right, leads us to being thankful and higher worship. So even if like you get how sinful that you are, right, don't forget about how sinful that you are, right?
Yeah, because, and that's where you start to move into like kind of a Pharisee mindset.
Yeah.
Is that, I used to be a sinner. I'm not anymore.
Yeah, that's right. Hey, I'm doing great.
I've made it.
Yeah.
And you haven't made it, demonstrating you haven't done what I've done.
Right. And there's a temptation there to do that. And it's something we should be careful of.
Yeah. And that's where, in the Lord's Prayer, or after the Lord's Prayer, Jesus says, forgive others or else you won't be forgiven. Kind of demonstrating that concept of, if you, which I think we talked about this on one of the podcasts a few weeks back, but if you withhold forgiveness from someone else, that's probably a good indicator that you don't realize the amount of forgiveness that you've received from God. So if you're having a hard time being thankful to God, if you're having a hard time forgiving others, maybe the problem isn't like just buckle down and try to like just force yourself to be thankful, but to like sit back and think about why. Yeah. Why should you be thankful? Why should you forgive others? And it all ultimately leads back to, man, you are a sinner. And there's this, as I preached last week, there's this inner battle within you driving you to do things you don't want to do. It's like I wake up and there's things I want to do. I want to be a good parent. I want to be a good husband. But then there's this inner selfishness that's just pulling me the other way. And just become very in tune with that, not to like beat yourself up, not as like a self-deprecating or, just trying to like, hold yourself over the fire, but more in the sense of like, just come to terms with who you are so that way you can allow God to move in you. Anyways, so be thankful. And thankfulness then leads to worship, because if we were to move it to like the sin and the grace aspect, if you have a full comprehension of who you are as a sinner and you're thankful that God has saved you from that, what's going to lead next is worship, because you couldn't do it.
You're right. There's no way.
It's like you're worshiping and you're serving and you're giving honor and reverence because you've received something you don't deserve, and that something is so massive that the only response is just response with thankfulness and worship.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Do you have any other thoughts on that?
Yeah. And so one of the things that Pastor Lee did was, so we've been talking, especially on a more individual level, about thankfulness and worship. Pastor Lee, this past Sunday, really sort of framed this need to be thankful into worship in terms of the church. Like as a church, local church body, right? As a manifestation of the local body of Christ, we should do the same things, right? To take
corporately
time,
come together.
Yeah. And I thought he did a really, really good job. Again, some of the names. By the way, did you see the picture of Wes and Krisha there? I'm glad that he said something, because I don't know if I would have recognized. I would have recognized him. I was like, oh my gosh, that's awesome. But just again, looking back, and obviously I wasn't here when he first got here, and none of us, the three of us, were. But to look back and be able to see all the things that God has done here at First Baptist Azle, through Pastor Lee and his ministry, and through all of the church members and everybody that contributes and volunteers and serves. Looking back on those things, man, there's so many reasons to be thankful and so many reasons to worship, because, we might be doing the work, right? But God is the one who gives the growth. And so it all goes back to him. And
well, and like we talked about a few weeks back about the idea of like corporate worship is where we're not just individually worshiping God, which is good. Do that.
Yes.
But the church is us coming together collectively, corporately, to worship God, unified in that. And it's really important to not just worship God, but also to like celebrate and to be thankful for those things collectively, corporately. And that builds a tight knit unity in there. It's like you can't just work, which also builds unity. But you have to take a time to step back and like okay, let's celebrate. Let's remember. Let's be thankful. Side note, none of us was here when Pastor Lee got here. That's true. However, the church that Pastor Lee was at before here, I believe, was in Leonard, which is just right down the road from Bonham, which is where I grew up. So me and Lee, before we even knew it, were within spitting distance of each other. Now, that's also the church that effectively fired him because they were being, racist against his wife.
He didn't want to be there anyway.
He didn't. It's a blessing in disguise. I'd much rather them reveal those colors.
Yeah.
Before his wife got there. Anyways, so I'm not sure what the church is, and I've only been to Leonard a handful of times, but I could see Leonard being like that.
Yeah, that's off in East Texas. That's kind of outside of my my realm of what's the word? I won't say comfort, but East Texas, anything east of Dallas is like the dark side of the moon.
Yeah.
For
now,
me.
if he would have been at a church in Bonham, they would have been upstanding, man. They would never have done that.
Of course, of course. But then he wouldn't have been here.
Then he wouldn't have been here.
That's right.
Anyways, all right. Well, you got anything else on the sermon?
No. I think we pretty well covered it.
Yeah, Judah, you got anything else on the sermon?
No, it's all good.
No, it's all good. You 2 thumbs up.
Two thumbs up.
All right. Well, Pastor Lee on the sermon read from Hebrews 12, talking about how God is inviting us in and allowing us to be part of his unshakable kingdom. While everything else will fall away, his kingdom will not. And our proper response to that, according to the passage, is to be thankful and to worship God, knowing that he's invited us into that kingdom. And so, again, you're always feel free to go back and watch that sermon, and you'll get a little bit more context to some of the 25th anniversary references that we have here. But that concludes our sermon recap. Now let's move into Bad Doctrine of the Week, which Judah made a thing for it. We'll add it in afterwards, but do you want to share anything about that?
It's amazing.
It's amazing?
Yeah.
All right, well, let's take a listen to it now.
It's the Bad Doctrine of the Week.
I'm sure that was amazing. We didn't hear it right now, but we'll add it in afterwards. Anyways, Bad Doctrine of the Week. Okay, we're moving into 2024 election season, right?
Oh, gosh, here we go.
Here we go. I went to college with this guy. I don't know if we ever actually met each other or talked. It was kind of like, we were acquaintances. We knew of each other, and somehow we became Facebook friends. He was like a theological studies major there.
Sounds cool.
No. Hold your opinions until we get out. I'm not going to share the name because I don't want to dox anyone. But he made a Facebook post. Ever since college, man, he's gone way, way off the deep end in terms of like conservative theology and whatnot. He's also gotten very political. And so he posted this the other day. I'll read it. Okay. Hey, fans. I'm not going to say the name. Just wanted to check in and to remind everyone that if you like Donald Trump or Greg Abbott, you're a horrible person. And you might believe Jesus exists, but you're not a Christian. And you're definitely not following the Bible. Love, this overweight ginger dude with a hard-earned biblical studies degree.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah.
So we're appealing to authority, are we?
Yeah, here we are, man. There's a few different ways that we can go about this. Mm-hmm. And let's just address all of them. Okay. Again, I'm not going to share the name, but this was a few months back when Donald Trump was just getting into his presidency campaign. Anyways, the broader picture holds true to what he's saying here. If you're a Republican and you support Republican candidates, you're a horrible person. You may say you believe in Jesus, but you don't follow him. And you definitely don't follow the Bible.
Yes.
Okay. Thoughts?
Well, first off, by implication, then you must vote for whichever Democrat comes out of the woodwork to run for Texas governor and Joe Biden. Is that the
Presumably
is that
so.
implied?
That you, if you were a Christian, you would vote Democrat.
Gotcha. Okay. Yes, and that's implied.
Well, it's not even that. It's like if you're a Christian, you must vote Democrat.
Right.
It's not even that you should vote Democrat, because he's not even given the option that if you do vote Republican, you're not even a Christian.
Oh, all right. So,
Which, by the way, he made a follow-up post. I went back and checked. It was a much longer exposition on this, but effectively saying the same thing, that there are no Christians who vote Republican because the ideologies of them do not align with the Bible so much, arguably, do not align with the Bible so much that you are just not a Christian.
Gotcha.
Which it might be worthwhile in future Bad Doctrines of the Week. Let's go through each one of those, because he gives a list.
Yeah.
And it's actually probably worthwhile going through. But
plenty of material.
Yeah, we'll just talk about the general concept of it, though.
Yeah. So, first off, probably going about answering this question or this bad doctrine with a little bit of a history lesson. So, wind the clocks back to 1850s, 1860s in the United States. So, you have the abolition of slavery movement really kind of getting its start, and even in the 1860 election, you have Abraham Lincoln wins the presidency, right? And so, in response, because everybody knows that he's an abolitionist, the southern states secede, and you're going to have the spark of the American Civil War. Well, both sides, both the northern states, the Union and the Confederacy, both believed very, very strongly that God was on their side. And this was a major theme, right, of the war, of the war. First off, initial secession, and then the war itself. Like, both are convinced God is on their side. Now, I think the better question probably would have been, who is on God's side, right? And I think, so fast forward to today, hey, Republicans are right. Republicans you have to vote Republican if you're a Christian, or at the very least, hey, you can't be a Democrat and a Christian at the same time, right? Apparently, we're hearing it from both sides. Mm-hmm. I think, in a lot of ways, Christianity, or even other religions in other parts of the world, are used politically to support these different, in our case, political parties. And used, and it's used shamelessly, and we've seen it in history time and time and time and time and time again. And it's, I think it's a worn out argument that, hey, if you're a Christian, you have to vote. It's almost like those Facebook posts that you see sometimes, where it's, hey, if you are a believer in Christ, like and share this post and write amen in the comments. And if you do that,
only true Christians will write amen.
Yeah, right. It's sort of like that. And so that's kind
Which, by the way, is the new version of what they used to call it, where they would email 20 people, or you'll get cursed. Chain emails, or it's like the new version of chain emails.
Yeah, it's like the same thing. Yeah. And so we can. There's a lot more we could talk about specifically, but big picture, I think that's a lot of what this is. Does this guy actually care about Christianity? Does he actually care about the way that believers are? I think he cares about the way believers are voting, but it's what is the primary concern? Clearly let's elect a Democrat, or let's elect Democrats rather than Republicans.
Yeah, and we were talking the other day, or not the other day, a podcast about your identity and where does your identity lie. It's like if you want to be into politics, that's great, that's fine. If you want to be a Republican, that's fine. Democrat, that's fine. Whatever. But just make sure that you're a Christian Republican or a Christian Democrat, not a Democrat Christian or a Democrat Republican. And if 100% of the Republican ideologies and talking points align with your theological talking points, there might be an issue.
Yeah.
Because the Republicans are not infallible.
No.
And same thing with Democrats. If 100% of the ideologies and talking points align with your theological issues, your ideologies might be influencing your theology.
Yeah.
Because it should be the other way, and it should be the point where like if you're Republican or conservative, your theological viewpoints can align with a lot of what conservatives believe in the values of conservatism. But if there's never a point that you say, I don't like that, I don't think that's lining up, then you might reevaluate.
Right.
You might be allowing your politics to influence your theology instead of your theology to influence your politics.
Yeah, absolutely. And then that's another thing. So like we know that, this political party or that political party has different talking points when it comes to appealing to Christians or even other religious groups. Mm-hmm. And so
it's annoying. It's like just manipulation.
Yeah, and that's, sometimes maybe there's a good faith effort, to their credit, the Supreme Court, which is primarily Republican nominated justices, they overturned Roe v. Wade.
Which I was shocked at.
Yeah.
Because I thought,
there's no way. That's what everybody said.
For years, man. Yeah. For years, they've just used it as a dangling carrot.
Yes.
In front of Republicans.
Exactly. And that's kind of exactly what I'm getting at.
Yeah.
So here, hey, they finally were able to do that, right? The right case came before them, and they ruled on it in a way that I would argue is in line with God's law, with justice and preserving human life, since we're all made in God's image. At the same time, right, if we're, here's sort of a word of warning for either political party, right? If you're hearing all this messaging that's appealing directly to you as a believer, and then once that political party gets in power and they don't actually follow through, that's how you know that you've been manipulated, right? It's sort of like Republicans for a long time. When President Obama was still in office, Republicans retook the House of Representatives, retook the Senate, and I don't remember how many bills that they passed through both houses of Congress, and it was a repeal of the Affordable Care Act, Obamacare, right? They know that if it goes to Obama's desk, he's going to veto it because the nickname of the law is his name, right? Suddenly,
it's literally his namesake.
Yes, right. Literally, it's his signature piece of legislation that he got passed as president. And so, fast forward, the 2016 election happens. Donald Trump gets elected. It's the same Republicans, more or less, in the House and the Senate. Republicans control the entire government. No repeals of the Affordable Care Act. Oh, look at that.
Yeah.
We're having show votes to, rouse the voter base.
And both sides do this.
Oh, absolutely.
They'll get into power and they'll own all the branches of the government, and they'll just kick the rock down the road just long enough until an election happens. They lose control of one of those and then be like, if we only had control.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, we need all the voters to show up and help us to flip the Senate, or we need everybody to come out so we can win the White House, and then we'll really get things done.
Yeah, and that's where, like you're saying, just like a word of warning as we go into these primaries and this election, just be really careful about being manipulated, because there's I'm not going to say that every politician is malicious, but they will play games.
They'll do what they have to get elected.
Yes.
Yep, absolutely.
And it's not even to say that they don't believe what they believe. Yeah. They may believe what they believe, but they're playing a game.
Oh yeah, politics is a game, and it's that is something that is good to recognize. The entire thing is a game, right? Yeah. Like gerrymandering, for example, where they're going to draw congressional districts, and many times what will happen is the political party that's in power in a particular state will draw lines for different districts, congressional and voting districts, in a way that will benefit them. And then the other side that's not in control will complain and kind of moan about it, but that's part of the game, right? It's all a game.
Just kicking the ball back and forth.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah. Now, one of the things I want to point out is, so going back to the quote, just wanted to check in and remind everyone that if you like Donald Trump or Greg Abbott, you are a horrible person. and you might believe Jesus exists, but you're not a Christian, and you are definitely not following the Bible. Now, again, he gives a whole other post about more specifically what he means in the different party ideologies, in which we might get into in the future ones. That'd probably be fun. But I really don't like putting stipulations onto Christianity that the Bible doesn't do. And let's even assume everything that he's saying is correct in the sense of all of the theological viewpoints align with democratic viewpoints. Let's just grant that premise. That's still...
Chris is making jokes today. But yeah, go ahead.
But let's just, for sake of argument, let's just grant that premise. That's still not stipulations for salvation, though.
Right.
The stipulations for salvation is one thing, grace through faith. Mm-hmm. And so that doesn't mean that you have to like fully, wholly believe 100% everything correctly. Like you can make mistakes.
Yep.
Like you can have theological mistakes. You can have certain political viewpoints that you're with all sincerity think are correct, but you've just mistaken and they don't line up with the Bible. You can have that happen and still be saved. And so I just don't like putting stipulations onto salvation that the Bible doesn't do. I feel like that gets into a literal false gospel.
Yes. There's something about not adding anything. It seems like maybe it's in Revelation. I'm not sure. I don't exactly remember, but something like that. Like somebody is cursed if they add anything. That would be a problem. Wouldn't it?
Now, the last thing I want to just mention is the very last statement, what you mentioned. This overweight ginger dude. Sorry, love this overweight ginger dude, which he's not even overweight. I don't even know why he put that. He's actually really fit.
He gets victim points.
Yeah, I guess so.
For being a ginger and being overweight.
Yeah. No, it's like he got points for being overweight, but then lost it because he was ginger. So love this overweight ginger dude with a hard-earned biblical studies degree. This is just a warning to all of y'all. Just because someone has a degree, one, doesn't mean they know what they're talking about. Right. But two, that's like you said earlier, it's an appeal to authority. Mm-hmm. Just because you have a degree doesn't mean that you're correct.
Right.
And so, again, we'll probably get into his follow-up post that gets more into the details. But what's funny is none of these come with any scripture references.
Oh, and I think that's pretty telling.
Yeah.
So if you're going to be talking about Christianity, who is and isn't a follower, and then absent from a post or an article or a conversation is any talk about God or any talk about what Scripture has to say, what God says through Scripture, that by omission, right, says an awful lot.
Yeah. Anyways, so we'll probably talk about this more. I find this fun.
You got me going on it, so I had a good time.
And I promise you that follow-up post is going to get into all the weeds. And it's actually probably worthwhile talking about as we go into this election season, to kind of break down biblically the different viewpoints and what each side actually believes versus like what the media portrays it as. But anyways, that's fun. Anyways,
absolutely.
You know what I forgot to do? I forgot to remind people to click and subscribe and all those things. Judah, here's what you need to do. If I ever forget that, you just interrupt me and you just say, stop. Like, subscribe, comment. You know what? This is Judah's job now. Judah, remind them to like, subscribe, comment.
Make sure to like, comment, and subscribe.
All right. This is officially Judah's job from here on out to do that because I always forget. But anyways, we are glad that y'all joined us here today. Let us know what you think about these things. Do you think Republicans aren't Christians? We'll see. Comment below. We love to hear what you think. But until next time, have a good week.